Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started shortly, so if you could grab a seat, that would be great. All right. Hello and welcome. My name is Emma, and I am the assistant store manager here at East City Bookshop. It's wonderful to be with you all today. Thank you so much for being here in person and for tuning in online, if that's how you're watching. We have so many amazing events and book clubs here at the store and online, so be sure to check out our calendar on our website. Of particular interest for this crowd, on August 3rd, we will be joined by the author C.K. Chow to discuss her newly released modern adaptation of Pride and Prejudice called Good Fortune. And our lovely Kate Myers will be back as the conversation partner for that event. First up, for some housekeeping. Number one, if you need a restroom, it's upstairs past the cash registers and greeting cards. Number two, if you're watching from home and experiencing any technical difficulties, please let us know in the chat. My colleague is monitoring the chat and can help with that as necessary. Number three, we will have time for questions for both in-person and virtual attendees. So even if you're watching on Zoom, you can participate. Please put those questions, if you're on Zoom, in the Q&A feature so that we will see them and ask them on your behalf. And finally, and most importantly, if you need to purchase a copy of the book, we have copies upstairs available, and we will be glad to help you out with that. All of the copies, again, are upstairs at the register and can be purchased prior to the signing line if you haven't already gotten one. I am so excited for tonight's conversation. Excavations follows four women, Elise, Cara, Z, and Patty, who are in different stages of and have different approaches to life. But when they uncover an artifact that has the potential to topple at least one person's entire career, they come to find that they have more in common than they originally knew. I loved Excavations and was really sad when I finished reading it because I couldn't hang out with the characters anymore. Kate Myers' writing has appeared in Elle, BuzzFeed, Narratively, Pop Sugar, and Self Magazine. She studied archaeology at the University of Pennsylvania and has lived in New York and Los Angeles, where she worked in TV development and for College Humor. She now resides in Annapolis, Maryland, with her husband and daughter. And our conversation partner, by day, Nikki Payne, is a curious doctor of anthropology in big tech. By night, she dreams of ways to subvert canon literature. Inspired by Jane Austen, her fresh romances turn expectations on their head and deliver sharp social commentary for the hopeless romantic. And now please give a warm welcome to Kate Myers and Nikki Payne.
Hey everyone, how are you? Thank you for coming. Hey, it's so great to see everyone. The first thing that I'd like to do is, I know that Kate has already had an introduction, but there's a member here today that I'd like to introduce. And these are Kate's shoes. Everyone, can someone please pay attention?
So you're picking out the right thing. This is my book tour splurge, so I'll show them to all of you afterwards.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
So just to give everyone an opener and an idea of your wonderful novel, if you were to describe Excavation in 3 words, what would it be?
Archaeology, Olympics and sweat.
Very good. One of the things that I loved about this book is that it is genuinely hilarious. It's genuinely hilarious, and it gave me, as a former academic, PTSD because those experiences, being particularly in the field of anthropology with superstar anthropologists and archaeologists, is very real. But you're able to make a book that was somehow incredibly funny, but really, really tackled some important issues and like elitism and gender inequity. Like, how can you do both? I'm asking for a friend.
Well, first, thanks everyone so much for coming. And I really appreciate all this. And Nikki has hosted and co-chaired some of these conversations at East City like a million times. So I'm in good hands. You're in good hands. And I love the store. So thanks to everyone here that set all this up and made this happen. So thank you. And yeah, let's see. Oh gosh. So I don't know if in the intros, if they talked a lot about like what the book is about. So now the book's been out for a couple of weeks. I don't know if people have read it yet or not. So it's set on an archaeological dig and in Greece that was the site of an early Olympics. So sort of the pre-Olympics. And there are a bunch of American archaeologists that are on the dig, and they're women of like across the professional spectrum who have to, some have been there forever, some have just started, and they kind of have to work together to figure out what's going on. And the male boss, as Nikki alluded to, is like this old crusty wasp, and they sort of like find something they shouldn't find, and it ends up sort of taking him down. So that's the vibe of the book. I feel like I get through these whole events and I never describe the book, and people have no idea what we're talking about. So trying to course correct as we go through book tour here. By the end, it'll actually be good. So yeah, I think to your point, we were just talking in the back, like how like writing comedy and that kind of thing. And I hope people think it's funny. I hope so. So I think that's the best way to send up these issues, you know, that these people are ridiculous, and to take into, you know, something like archaeology that people romanticize or think is important or think is glamorous and think is so serious, and just say, you know, you're just like eating trail mix in a trench. That's what you're doing here. Like, it's okay. You're going to sit on stuff. You're going to break stuff. And certainly we talked about this too, like my whole inspiration for the book, or my whole experience in writing about the book, is I studied archaeology as an undergrad. So I truly know very little about it. I have like an 18 to 22-year-old's 101 knowledge of this, as is apparent in the book if you read it. And then after college, you know, I really wanted to avoid getting a job as much as possible. It's my main motivation at 22. And so I went on a dig to Greece for a few months that was not dissimilar from this one. It was an old athletic site. It was significantly more boring than the one in the book. The one I went to was in Greece, really remote on a mountain. But it was all about like religion and stuff that was like sort of not very commercial to talk about in the book. So, but yeah, it was really like summer camp. You know, it's like I was really jazzed to learn Greek, and it was like 40 Americans. So I never learned a word of Greek, but
you did such an amazing job of making us feel like we were in an archaeological dig. Outside of that trip to Greece, did you do any other research for preparing for this novel in particular?
Not as much as I should have, probably, but yeah, a little bit. I really just based it on that experience, and then some other research of, you know, looking into it a bit and watching a lot of videos of it. And I really just wanted to strike the balance of, if you learn something in the book, great, go with God, but it's more just about like the relationships and it being funny. And, you know, I don't want it to be didactic or anything like that. So, yeah, I mean, like, certainly when I was there, again, 22 years old, I was way more focused on like getting a boyfriend that summer than I was about like learning anything or like acquiring any knowledge. I was just highly invested in like getting a boyfriend to like me back for that summer. So I feel like those priorities really like loom large in the book.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're human beings at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely human beings. But you also did a great job of creating a sense of place and creating a sense of a dig, and even that sense of waiting for something to happen, even if it's waiting to get a boyfriend.
Well, it's yeah, there's a lot of well, the dig that I was on, It was in its 35th year. I mean, these digs are like generational academic endeavors. Like they're crazy. And the guy that was on my dig was like himself, like 100 years old. He had spent his whole life doing this. Like he started when he was 40. He was in his 70s. Like it's crazy. And for those 30 years, you might not even find anything. I mean, it is like profoundly boring. Like that's the whole vibe. It's like deeply boring. So it's not like you go and like you have your little Indiana Jones toothbrush and like the Elgin marbles pop out and you go to lunch. Like it's pretty, you might not find anything. So, but that's part of the send up too. It's much more like a summer camp feel and things like that. And the physicality, it's a very physical thing, you're digging and it's like very academic, but it's really just labor. And that's why they want all these 22-year-olds to go, because they want like 22-year-olds to go and like dig.
Yeah.
And I was not allowed to touch anything, rightly so.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're like, there's such a hierarchical system there. So
yeah, I was on a dig once when I was trying to decide which of the 4 fields I would be in. And then I immediately sat there for like 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh, I'm cultural. Like, oh, I'm sorry.
It sucks. It really sucks. You have to really like it.
This ain't me.
Yeah. And I should say too, I like studied archaeology as an undergrad at Penn. Again, priorities entirely out of whack. Nikki was actually a professor at Penn. She's like the actual smart person.
No,
so
no,
the
you're
questions,
actual
please
smart.
direct them accordingly.
If you have questions about people without artifacts, please send them to me. So you also talk about like how mundane that experience can be in a dig, but particularly in writing this novel, were there any surprises, any unexpected turns in kind of writing up this novel? Did it take you in places you didn't expect?
Yeah. So in the writing process itself, it's so much about relationships, both in and out of the book. And in the book, I turned in the first draft and I just really wanted it to be like funny and fun and summary. And I personally am an incredibly repressed wasp. That's my emotional profile. And so, me and my therapist. And so when I turned in the book, my editor was like, we really got to work on like the feelings, the characters and the emotions, like people want to read about that. So that was like the creative endeavor. We worked really hard on deepening those moments and making those more valuable. And I think as a first-time author, you and I have talked about this, what really surprised me in the most pleasant way, and I would say was like my favorite part of the whole process, because being a writer, you're such a lonely weirdo. Like you're just by yourself all the time. You're not like talking to anybody. Yeah. Was once you start working with an editor, how collaborative it is, and how they are so impactful to the outcome of the book. And we just use this word, like the draft I turned in to HarperCollins at first is unrecognizable from the book that came out. It's really, really changes a lot. And the editor works so much, as like other authors know, it's no joke. So that was awesome and very pleasant to get to feel like there are other people in the room with you finally working on this.
Yeah. Was there anything particularly challenging for you to write? A scene or character?
Besides human being emotions.
Yeah.
Actual emotions. I've heard about those. I'm learning more and more all the time. That was tough. I mean, will connect to your genre because Nikki is a romance author. And I really can't claim that genre, but because it was we knew it was going to come out in July and be pitched therefore as like a beach read, summer read, that my editor and the marketing team really wanted me to lean in a little bit on a little bit more of the romance. They were like, not only expounding the romantic and emotional emotions, but like describe how he looks, describe how they look at each other, describe his body. And I was like, oh my God, my mother's going to read this. Like, are you nuts? Like, I'm not going to talk about somebody's body. Like, I just completely shut down. But that is like the bread and butter.
It's bread and butter.
Yeah.
Bread and butter.
Nikki's like, please.
I'm describing you in my head right now.
Right. I know. I can't handle it. I can't handle it. So that was like a challenge for me. And I pushed back and like, so yeah, that was a journey.
Wow. That's so interesting, is that the field itself and the book itself is actually quite sensorial, and that's an asshole word, but you know what I mean? Like it's there's so much sensory in it, right? that
the heat and the touching. It's
Yeah.
very the whole thing is very tactile.
it absolutely is.
Yeah, but I was
right?
like, but they can't touch each other. Just kidding. They touch each other, but in a tasteful way.
In a tasteful way. Everyone's touching in a tasteful way. Put away your hopes. Exactly. The romance author is like, okay, so we're talking about like these characters and the way they look and describing them. Have you thought about if this were a summer movie and HBO limited series, have you like fan cast any of your characters?
A little bit. It's funny, think so many authors are so different. I'm so not visual. Like we were talking about the cover at dinner right before we came here, and they were like, oh, did you like do the cover? And I'm like, no, they just like handed me the cover. They don't give, first of all, I'm first time author. They're not trying to like have me do any of that, but I'm also so not visual. So I think some authors do like a Pinterest board and fan cast and like think about it a lot. I have not, but I will say now, the exciting news of the summer is that I'm thinking about it now because I did sell the TV rights to the book.
Oh,
So
very cool.
which is crazy. And because of the it's like took a million months and a million phone calls and a million emails and all that. So because of the writer's strike going on in LA, I'm not allowed to like say it publicly, but if you come up to me afterwards, I'll tell you who we sold it to.
Ooh, secrets. You get it here first. Okay, that's really cool. Did you have a hope or a desire for any of your readers to connect with a particular character? Like, was there, you have an ensemble cast, but we don't try to pick favorites, but who's your favorite?
People are always asking me, who do you identify with and who's you? And like the benefit of being a writer is that all like the dumb shit and crazy stuff that happens to you in your life, you get to use in the book. So every like bad and embarrassing thing, which I have so many examples of in my personal life, are on the page. You get to like use all those things. So a lot of little things are in there. Like I've had the immense privilege of calling off a wedding. That's in the book. I've had like terrible, messy breakups, like just rough nonsense that is just like you get to use it. That's the outcome of being a writer. So
That's
all of
awesome.
that's in there. So I identify with like all the people, and that's how you can get to those places with characters in the first place, is feeling it yourself. I would like to think that I'm like Elise, who's like super mean and ruthless and doesn't care what people think, and like I would like to be her some days. But I'm probably like Patty, who's like a total bozo and clueless. Like almost certainly that's who I am at my core. And yeah, I hope people take away, all like the touchy feely feel good stuff about the women in the story and like the sports of it all. It's like weird to think of it as like a sports book. It's certainly not, but it kind of is. So it's hard to like balance talking about it in that way.
Yeah. I mean, and talking about these women, particularly since you have not indicated who's your favorite, we all noticed. What types of like tools did you use to craft each of these characters? Were they each on their own arc? Did you have them in separate rooms? Did you like craft in the kitchen? Or, like,
I mean, I think like a lot of authors, it helps me to think of them in their whole life, where the book is just like this little slice of time for them. At least in this case, it's not like it's just one summer. That's it. It's like 3 months or so. So it really helps me to think about, where were they long before this? Where are they long after this? And like, what is the context for this for their life? And I think I thought about it early on, like an ensemble. Like I want to craft it such that them interacting with each other will be really rich.
Yeah.
Versus just a first person perspective and it's just them. So just want them to play off each other. And if there were this kind of person match with this kind of person, what would that be like? And the ensemble and the range of ages was important to me too.
Yeah. You talked about what was difficult to write, and that was like, ew, humans emoting. But can you talk about what was like the most joyful thing? Like,
what I feel lucky. I feel like to me, some of the comic stuff is easy. Like it's easier because again, I'm like, how do I, comedy and pathos and all that. It's easier for me to joke than it is for me to like get into it. And so I would often work a scene around a joke or like build up situational moments that I thought would be funny between people and kind of work out from there. And then sort of like try to, again, this sounds like an asshole phrase, tie that in thematically with like the book and
more asshole phrases.
Mirrors the mosaic of what's happening.
I love that.
And things like that on a couple levels. So build up from the jokes usually.
Yeah. No, we talked about how actually it's a quite complicated thing to be funny on the page. And it takes quite a bit of craft to kind of evoke that type of emotion. Like laughter is kind of visceral.
They would get cut. Like talk about my editor being helpful. Like luckily lots of that got cut because some of it was very bad. So it's helpful to have like multiple readers. And we were just talking about this before. My editor is like in her 40s and she read the book and did a pass on it. And then her assistant was like 23 and did another pass on it too. And that was very valuable. Sometimes my editor would be like, I don't understand this. And the 23-year-old would be like, no, that's great. Keep it in. So it was like good to have like a generational expansion there.
Yes. No, the editors actually it's so important to that writing process. But do you have any like craft tips for writing comedy?
Oh gosh. You know, we talked about this too. Like a lot of comedy you can see, so to speak. Like you can see people trying hard. And so it's hard not to show it. And I think that's a lot of what got cut was stuff where they were like, oh, you're kind of like shoehorning this in there. It's not like natural. And any like TV, anything is like this, just building it from the characters up. Like if the characters are well done, they're going to be funny when they interact with each other and things like that. And the setting to me was funny because it's like I think of this whole thing as just like a workplace. Yeah. It's really just like day to day, boring colleagues, day after day, same stuff, different day. And there's comedy in that, you know, working with people who are idiots just day after day, which we all do. So.
And so this is a debut for you. And like any writer, I think any writer reads voraciously. Do you have a sense of like authors who you feel influenced by, or that you are just like, will absolutely say like, this is the reason why I write?
Yeah. Oh gosh, for sure. You might be the same. Like I try to stay in the headspace of like keeping it light when I'm writing. You know, I'm not reading a lot of like World War II drama during the time that I'm writing these like light, summery, funny books. So the two books that I read like over and over again while writing and like would probably love to shamelessly rip off would be Less by Andrew Sean Greer, one of my favorite books of all time. And Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. Those are both like funny and really weird and specific, and I just really liked those. Nothing to do with archaeology in either case, and then I also am like a huge Ellen Hildebrand fan, like love those like aspirational problems of her books and just like easy summer reads, keeping it light. And I do the same thing with other culture, so to speak. Like I try to like listen to trashy celebrity podcasts and like watch The Bachelor and just like keep it real chill during the writing times. Like I'm not trying to bring the mood down, you know, life's hard enough. So when I write, I really just want to like, but then like I will say on the flip side of that, I read my obligatory like annual Ellen Hildebrand book this summer. But the other book that I've been like, because now I'm on sub and I'm like I'm trying to like stick around for this month, for lack of a more professional term, while I'm on tour and traveling. And the book I just read that I can't stop talking about is Booth by Karen Joy Fowler. So I've been going around like a nut for a month talking about John Wilkes Booth. It's so good. Obviously, it's one of those books where you know how it ends. But it's so good and like so heavy, and I just loved it. So my taste runs the gamut.
No, when I'm writing, I have to keep it. I have a steady flow of like the next generation always kind of playing really smooth.
You got to keep it light.
You have to keep it light.
Yep.
Otherwise, it comes into your brain.
Totally.
It really does. Can you share a few of like a few insights into like your writing process? Do you like kind of wake up in the morning, you yawn, you get a coffee, you just start hammering away?
8 hours later,
a novel.
I look up from the screen. Right. No, I wish. I'm gonna like out myself as having like no work ethic at all, which people who know me know to be true. I'm a big break taker. Like I'm not bang your head against the keyboard kind of worker,
Yeah.
you know, like if it's going well, it's good. Because to your point, if it's not going well, it's going to get cut. It's not going to work
Yeah.
anyway. So just like walk away, go for a walk, like do something with like your dog, come back. I'm a big like get out and come back. And indeed the book itself, I had a benefit of this, although my like publishing journey, I wrote the first draft of the book in 2016 when I lived in California, and then took many years off. I like went through this big breakup, moved back to the East Coast, shelved the book thinking like, I'll never really work on this again. My little like pipe dream of being a novelist, you know, has got to go away. And then in 2020, this before I had a kid, I had lots of time. A lot of people were picking up things to like distract themselves and do hobbies and all that kind of stuff. And so I picked up this manuscript that I had written like 4 years ago and started editing it. And it was such a gift to have taken all this time away from it. To be like, oh, wow, this is horrible. I like the idea here, but this needs a full rewrite. So that was great. And then, as you know, from there, like getting an agent and selling it, and it's like such a long process, but all that time seems crazy. I mean, it's been like 6-7 years since I first wrote the book, but it's like the book gets better over time, and it's a good thing. It's like a forced patience. So
yeah, time is a good thing, I think, for a writer. Okay, I have like one last question before we get into a very silly little game. The last question is, what can readers expect from you coming up in the future? What are you working on?
Yeah, God willing. So nothing at the moment, which is great because my book is on submission, which means I've already submitted my second book to HarperCollins. So I'm waiting for them to give me the green light. So I'm at their mercy, which is, as all authors know, the worst. It's a terrible feeling. So, and yeah, you're like, there's nothing you can do while you're on submission, as they say. So for this month, I'm luckily outrageously busy with book tours, so I'm not thinking about it too much, but I'm actually thinking about it all the time, and dominates my nightmares. So anyway, but they'll get back to me and we'll cross that bridge. But yeah, the second book is nothing to do with this book. It's a total departure. It's like a different world, a different setting, same kind of genre, I guess. It's in the Bahamas, and it's set on a yacht, and it's like an upstairs downstairs between the owners and like the staff that work on it, and they have a history they didn't know about, and so we'll see. But that's the gist of it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, we have a game, and in this game, I'm going to ask Kate to pretend to be an archaeologist from 100 years from now, and I'm going to give her modern artifacts, and she'll have to explain to her clamoring group of graduate students here what these modern artifacts are. And
I'm ready.
Really, I'm really only accepting wrong answers.
I'm not ready.
Okay, here is the first artifact. Can everyone see that? Can everyone see this artifact? For those on the phone, virtually, can everyone see this artifact?
So picture it like under dirt, you know, you've just found this like in at the bottom of a trench. Yeah. Wow. I mean, I think it's clear as an archaeologist who is an academic that these are frisbees that you would just toss to one another.
Yeah.
At the time, you know, they would really be crusty like bricks by the time you found them, and quite degraded. So
this is how humans interacted with each other. They just
you just handed it to each other
bricks
and hit each other with them. Yeah, I think that's safe to say. If not building materials, you could stack them, glue them to one another.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Okay. Second image. This is going to be a little tough. If you guys remember this from the 90s. Okay. This is a shake weight. Can you
what?
Yes. Can you, archaeologists from the future, describe what humans could possibly have done?
This is what's so awesome about archaeology is like you would find this and be like, this is a religious icon.
It's not
this
wrong.
Is part of a ceremonial ritual. Yeah, that's what you would say. You'd be like, oh, this is a musical instrument that they play during the rite of passage when a boy becomes a man.
When a boy becomes a man.
Yeah, that's obviously
that is absolutely a ceremonial ritual of like body, like protection.
Everything the light touches, all the dumb stuff that you accumulate in your life will take on incredible meaning in 100 years.
Yes. If you can imagine the bowls that you eat out of,
That's
like
right.
everything.
They're ceremonial dining objects.
Ceremonial importance. Okay. One last one. I can't believe we skipped over this. This is very important. Who knows what these people were up to?
Well, these are obviously the garbs of religious officials.
Religious garbs.
That's right. Priests, high priests
High priest.
would wear these during religious rites.
Oh my gosh, I love this. I love this. Honestly, as an anthropologist, this is all
all the stuff.
everyone's guessing.
All dumb stuff. Yeah. Like there's no record in 100 years. It's all blown up.
It's all blown up.
We don't know.
These were religious garbs.
And there's so much of that in the book too. Like all the dumb
That's what's
plastic
great
stuff
about the
that
book.
will literally never degrade. Like someone will find it and be like, oh my God.
Yeah.
The most important thing.
Yeah. And that's what's kind of at the heart of this silly game, is like that.
How absurd it all is.
Well, yes, absurd, but also like that the way that humans kind of build permanence, right? And
You tell a story about things. Yeah. Right.
There it is. There it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Whether it's true or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. You tell the story you want to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. You tell a story, and that's actually how things continue to live on. Like, honestly, like excavations, right?
They'll find this book in
They'll
100
find this
years.
book, and it'll be proof that we were here and active in the world, That's cool. Okay, so let's open the floor up for a few audience questions, and we'll also take some questions from the virtual room. Yes. Ooh.
Yes.
Leaving aside tonight, obviously it's amazing. Have there been any particular highlights of your book tour so far?
So many. What a roller coaster.
We've also seen low light.
Yeah, some low lights. Oh geez Louise. So yeah, there's
The question.
I'm sorry. Yeah, the question. We're sorry, we should be better about that. Have there been any highlights or lowlights of book tour so far? So yeah, I'm in like smack dab in the middle of book tour. So I started in Bethany Beach. The book came out on July 4th. So it was like a beach weekend. So they sent me to the bookstore. That was great. That was really fun. A lot of cool moms on vacation,
Love it.
Yeah, I like to identify myself that way. And then New York, that was really a highlight. I mean, I lived in New York for like 10 years. And the launch party was at the Strand, which was just like total pinch me life moment. I cried. It was
That is so
that's probably
cool.
just because I'm pregnant and hormonal, but also it was a big deal to me to get to the Strand. If you had told me 15 years ago, like that was incredible. They had like my poster in the window outside, like that was wild. Lowlights, this is like TMI, but a distant relative who I'm not very close to passed away last week, and it's fine, we're not close, but we're getting a surprise funeral as part of book tour in the mix.
Yeah,
So yeah, really just keeping me on my toes this week, so
Wow.
yeah, you never know. But
Yeah.
it's in Philly. We're already gonna be in Philly, so if it's gonna happen,
Swing by the old funeral.
yeah, you just pop by after the book event. Yeah. So yeah, anyway. So
great.
yeah, it's been a wild ride. And then next week, on Thursday, what day is it? Tuesday?
Yeah, it's Tuesday.
Thursday, we have Philly, like I said, and then all next week I'll be in LA doing an event out there, and then doing meetings with the TV people.
Oh, I love it. Love it. Question? I think there's another one here.
Oh yeah. How did you decide who should narrate what scene?
Yeah, that and my editor and I worked a lot on that. How did you decide who should narrate each scene? So yeah, the book really kind of switches between these 4 women. There were 5 at one point. We took out one of the characters who was going to be prominent in it. So learned a lot in that regard about trying to keep it not confusing for people, which is apparently a goal readers like. And I think just trying to make each voice feel really distinct, and what was happening in the story to feel like this person would be the right person to tell that moment, which was hard. And it switched. I wish I could say that it's all been, carefully thought out, and I started at page 1 and ended at page 300, but it's a real, you kind of write chapters and scenes as they come. So it changed based on like the pace and things like that. So that was hard to pull off, and we tried to like make it more organized than the first draft was, certainly.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'd just be interested because you're both writers, but also other writers that talk to you about the writing process, especially at the editorial, all the editing. And when you feel like some writers are like, I can't change it that much, or like, I feel like I've lost the original direction because they're getting all this input, even though they want to make their book a sellable book, right? That they can't get through because they just feel like it's not my book anymore, Yeah.
So the question is like when to take feedback and does it feel like it's yours anymore, and how to balance the book feeling like it's yours versus all the editorial input. Again, I feel like I say this and it sounds like I have no artistic integrity, which is 100% true. I'm a big believer. It's my first book. I have had the privilege. I work with this amazing agent who I love with all my heart. I've like entrusted my life to her. I'm in with like one of the big publishers who I love, and I love my editor. I feel like my big piece of advice to anyone trying to do this is once you start working with smart people, listen to them.
Yeah.
Do what they tell you. I'm a big like, you say jump, I'll say how high writer. Like, great. Like HarperCollins has sold 1 billion books. I've sold 0.
Yeah.
So like, if you think I should do this, I'll do it,
Yeah.
And there were little moments of pushback. Like I would fight to keep a joke, or I would say like, no, I think the character might do this or say this. But for the overarching stuff, really bending the book toward commercialization of like all they want to do, which is all I want to do, is sell a lot of copies of the book. That's really their goal. They're not trying to screw you. They're not trying to like quash your artistic vision. They just want to sell books. And so you are aligned with that as well. And I think the sooner you sort of work as a team in that regard and do what they tell you and trust that these people are really smart. We were talking about that with our editors, are both amazing people. So yeah, saying yes to almost everything. And maybe, on my 5th book, I'll push back and have my like weird artistic vision, but I'm a big believer in just saying people are smarter than me and I'll do what they tell me to do.
I think for me, it was a little bit of that. I was also a debut as well. But there are also some voice things that I wanted to keep that I just had to explain. Like my characters, they loved each other very much, but they also referred to each other as heifer, And like an editor would say, like, is she calling her sister a cow? And I'm like, yeah, she is, but she loves her. It's a loving heifer. And so like those types of instances where you actually have to say like, no, this is actually how people who love each other still talk to each other, or this is actually a fine word to use, or a fine phrase to use in this particular context. So there's some instances of like showing and saying like, actually, this is okay to say. And those questions and pushbacks, they aren't malignant, right? They're just like, are people mad? Or like they're trying to catch on to the emotional tone. And sometimes there are like kind of subcultural tones that fly underneath the radar that you have to bring up to the surface. I think oftentimes as a writer, like writing in a subculture, you have to kind of bring that up and out in ways that are a little more like active. You have to say like, no, this is what this means.
Yeah, and there were moments that were, you sort of have to trust yourself as an expert, which is like sort of what you're saying. Yeah, it's like that there were times when and again, I know so little about archaeology, but where I would make references like that, like references to famous archaeologists, which, my editor has no idea who that is. Like the average person does not know who that is, but I'm like, I really want to keep it in because it sort of lends some authenticity to this. So let's keep it in.
Yeah. And I was excited to go, ooh.
All the nerds get it.
Yeah, the nerds got it. Are there any questions from the virtual community?
Amy asks, was the rebellious spirit of your characters inspired by your cool aunt?
Hi, Amy. My aunt in Atlanta. Beaming in live. Yes, all the best character traits from my relatives.
And that question was asking if the rebellious spirit of her characters were inspired by her amazing aunts. And I'm going to say probably yes.
Totally. I am lucky to have a lot of amazing rebellious women in my life, so of which you are one. So yeah, so much is like brought in from real life and amplified and all that. So yeah, absolutely. The more rebellious women and men could be, the better.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Your first book, like you wrote it so long
Yeah. Is the writing process harder or easier? With the first book, you do have like so much time, like 7 years to like go over this and think about it. And this time I'm very much on deadline. Yeah, it's so different. It's a classic like sophomore album situation. So time will tell in a way. It's I would say on two sides of the coin. One, it's easier because you've just been put through your paces. You really know you've been through this boot camp of editorial, where how high the bar is, and I've learned so much. So there's that. I know the standard, and on the flip side, to like lower the bar, I know how much changes. So the great thing is like I just turned in my first like 80-90 pages or so. I would be stunned if a single paragraph of that made it into the final book.
Yeah.
Like it's just so little makes it from the first draft, and so much changes. So it kind of lets you off the hook a little bit of like, doesn't have to be perfect. I just have to like convey the ideas and the themes and give a strong sense of the characters. We will build it up from there. That's just the scaffolding. So the good and the bad, but I'm very curious to see what the experience is like the second time around.
Yeah. I actually think that myth of kind of building the perfect manuscript stops a lot of people with like books in their heart from writing.
Yeah. It really can suck at first, which
Yeah.
is okay.
It's okay.
The bar can be really low. Yeah. And it's true. I mean, the big hurdle in a lot of ways is getting an agent for the book. And that draft, holy crap. I mean, it was terrible. Like, it's incredible that I like signed with these people. So it changes so much.
Yeah.
So it's okay. You just have to like have the voice and the idea, and that's what people on the team are buying into, because they know, if anyone, these professionals really know how much it changes. So yeah. So take your crappy book and put it out there into the world. It's okay.
It's okay.
And have you read some books lately? Some of them are bad. So to give you a lot of hope.
Yes, ma'am.
So gender dynamics seems to be pretty large in Excavations, and I'm wondering if that is a theme you will continue to explore in your.
Good question. Thank you. I think it's certainly my primary interest in life. I think, honestly, it's what I think about all the time. Oh yeah, this will be our last question. Sorry. Sorry, just repeat it. I couldn't tell if you were like, hurry up or repeat yourself. Just do better is what this means to me. The question was, gender dynamics feature prominently in the first book. Will they feature in the second book? For sure. They're less on the nose, so to speak. In this, it was like very heavy handed and like history belongs to women, which it does. But that's right. But in the second book, it's similar structure of like a workplace situation that sort of escalates. That's sort of the structure that I would like to follow second time. But yeah, it's definitely like, I mean, I don't understand men, so I don't think that I'll be having any like, a lot of books featuring an ensemble of dudes anytime soon. They're a mystery to me.
That's a great question. Anyone else? Anyone virtually? All right, let's sign some books.
Thank you so
all
much.
for coming.
Great. Thank you all for joining us tonight. And thank you to our authors for such a lovely conversation. We're now going to transition to our signing line. If you would like to purchase a copy of Excavations or of Pride and Protest, we have copies of both up at the register, and you can do so before joining the signing line. If you are willing and able to fold up your chair and set it aside against one of the bookshelves, we would be very grateful. And a staff member will come around to collect them. Thank you again so much for coming out tonight.